Freedom is a word we're taught to crave. We imagine it as open skies, unlocked doors, and endless choices, a life where nothing stands in our way. But Jean-Paul Sartre took that dream and turned it inside out. For him, freedom wasn't a gift, it was a sentence. You are born without a script, without a God to answer to, without a nature that tells you who you are. The moment you exist, the burden begins. Sartre called it the human condition. Existence comes first, essence later. We are not made for a purpose. We invent it ourselves, moment by moment, choice by choice. But here's the catch. There is no one else to blame. Every decision you make becomes part of your definition. Every hesitation, every avoidance, every compromise writes your story just as clearly as action. Even refusing to choose is still a choice. And this freedom is not clean. It drags responsibility in its wake. You cannot hide in tradition. You cannot hide in faith. You cannot hide in love or in the soft approval of others. Their gaze might tell you who you are, but in Sartre's eyes, that gaze is another prison. He saw the human being as a creature desperate for excuses, and he spent his life tearing those excuses away. Sartre's philosophy is less a guide to living than a mirror. It shows you yourself without the lies you've built for comfort. And when that reflection stares back, raw, unprotected, and undeniable, you might wish you could unsee it, but you can't. For centuries, philosophers had reassured humanity with the same comforting refrain: you are part of a design. Aristotle said everything in nature has an essence, an inner purpose it is destined to fulfill, just as an acorn is meant to become an oak. The medieval church promised the same, with God as the author of your story before you took your first breath. Even when faith faltered, Kierkegaard kept the script intact, urging the individual to place their trust in a divine plan that only God could see. Jean-Paul Sartre burned that script. He stood before the ruins of a Europe shattered by war and occupation and declared something no one wanted to hear. Existence precedes essence. You are not born with a role, a meaning, or a destiny. You appear in the world first, unformed, undefined, and only afterward do you become something through your actions. For Sartre, this was not a poetic flourish. It was a philosophical verdict with no appeal. There is no hidden plan to lean on when life breaks you. No fate to justify what you've done. You cannot say, "I had no choice," without lying to yourself. Every decision, no matter how small, is an act of authorship over your own being. Even in chains, even under threat, you choose how to respond. And in that moment, you are responsible for who you are becoming. He had seen the cost of denying this. During the Nazi occupation of France, Sartre watched people hide behind obedience, behind ideology, behind the illusion that history or God had forced their hand. To him, these were not excuses. They were acts of cowardice dressed as inevitability. In his eyes, you are always free, and that freedom has teeth. But this is not the kind of freedom that feels light in the chest. This is the freedom that crushes. If there is no God, no natural law, no eternal truth, then every choice you make must be made as if all of humanity were watching. In choosing for yourself, you are, whether you admit it or not, declaring, "This is what a human should be." And here lies Sartre's split from other modern thinkers. Nietzsche also tore down the divine order, but filled the void with the ideal of the Übermensch, a figure who rises above the herd to create new values. Sartre refused to offer such an idol. No higher man is coming to redeem you. There is only the raw fact of your freedom and the burden it carries. Heidegger, too, spoke of authenticity, but for Sartre, authenticity was not a matter of contemplation. It was the daily grind of refusing to hide behind false identities, moment after moment, choice after choice. In Sartre's world, authenticity is not about finding your true self waiting somewhere deep inside you. There is no inner essence to uncover. You are not a buried statue. You are a living act. Authenticity is the refusal to hide behind false roles, even when those roles are comfortable, flattering, or rewarded by the world. This is why Sartre's idea of bad faith feels so claustrophobic. It makes it impossible to retreat into the safety of saying, "This is just who I am." Because in his eyes, the truth is far more unsettling. You are what you choose, right now, in this moment. If bad faith is the lie you tell yourself, the gaze is the cage other people build around you, and one you often choose to stay in. Sartre described it as one of the most invasive forces in human life. The moment you become aware of another person looking at you, not just with their eyes, but with the silent verdict behind them. That gaze reduces you from a living, choosing subject into a fixed object. It can happen anywhere. At a party, when a stranger glances your way and you suddenly become conscious of how you're standing, what you're holding, the expression on your face. In a workplace, when your boss's eyes flick towards you in a meeting and you feel yourself adjusting, straightening, performing the employee role without even thinking. The gaze freezes you into a picture, and the picture is never quite your own. This is why Sartre's No Exit ends with that deceptively simple line: hell is other people. Not because human beings are inherently cruel, but because we constantly define each other, pinning one another to roles and narratives that shrink our freedom. The real hell for Sartre is that part of you wants to be defined. The gaze offers safety. It says, "Here is who you are," and it spares you from the exhausting labor of constantly inventing yourself. But what happens if you break free of that? What happens if you strip away the gaze, the comforting masks, the lies of bad faith? Sartre gives us the answer in his first novel, Nausea. On the surface, it's the diary of Antoine Roquentin, a man adrift in a provincial town, slowly losing his grip on the familiar. But it's not madness, it's clarity. Roquentin begins to see the world without the soft filter of human purpose. The shape of a tree root, the weight of a pebble in his hand, even the presence of his own body. These things become unbearably strange. Objects are no longer useful or beautiful or ugly. They simply are, in their raw existence, stripped of the labels that once made them manageable. It's in these moments that the title comes alive. Roquentin feels a kind of existential sickness, a vertigo that comes from confronting the bare fact of being. It's not that life is bad, but that it is brutally indifferent. And in that indifference, Sartre saw the truth. The meanings we live by are not given, they are invented. Without them, reality stands exposed, and it can feel alien, even hostile. This is where his path crossed and diverged from Albert Camus. Camus named this confrontation the absurd, the clash between our hunger for meaning and the world's refusal to provide it. But where Camus spoke of rebellion, of living in defiance of the absurd, like a man pushing his boulder up the hill with a kind of grim joy, Sartre offered no such comfort. In Nausea, there is no defiant hero. There is only the weight of freedom, and the demand to create meaning in a universe that refuses to help you. Nietzsche had framed this as an opportunity for the Übermensch, the one who creates new values to fill the void left by God's death. Sartre rejected the idea of a singular higher man. The responsibility was not for the exceptional few, it was for everyone. There is no special category of human who gets to be the creator of meaning. Every one of us is condemned to that role, whether we like it or not. The worst part is that there is no escape. You can't unknow what you've seen. Once you've glimpsed the gaze for what it is, once you felt the nausea of existence stripped bare, you can't fully return to the illusions that protected you. You might still act as if you believe in them, but part of you will always know you are pretending. In Sartre's world, this is not a momentary crisis you overcome. It's the condition of being awake. It's living without the protective walls of bad faith or the fixed image offered by the gaze, knowing that you alone must supply the meaning, and that tomorrow you will have to supply it again. Sartre's philosophy was never meant to stay in the cafe. It wasn't an elegant puzzle for academics to admire from a distance. It was a demand. If freedom is absolute, then you are responsible not only for yourself, but for the shape of the world you help create. And for Sartre, that responsibility could not stop at the threshold of politics. After the Second World War, he emerged as France's most famous intellectual, not because he had the safest ideas, but because he refused to insulate philosophy from the chaos of public life. Freedom, for him, was not a private luxury, it was a collective burden. If you claim your own liberty while ignoring the oppression of others, you are living in bad faith on a societal scale. This belief pulled him into the messiest and most controversial causes of his time. He supported anti-colonial movements in Algeria and Vietnam, spoke against the hypocrisies of both Western liberalism and Soviet communism, and took political stands that alienated allies and infuriated enemies. Even when he defended regimes later revealed to be brutal, it was not out of blind loyalty, but from the conviction that a philosopher could not sit in judgment from the safety of abstraction. To live authentically meant taking sides, even at the risk of being wrong. This refusal to be co-opted reached its most famous expression in 1964, when Sartre was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. For most, it would have been the crowning moment of a career. Sartre turned it down. His reason was not arrogance, it was consistency. Accepting the prize, he argued, would turn him into an institution, a figurehead, a fixed essence in the public imagination, and that, for a man who preached that we are always in the process of becoming, was a kind of death. Here, Sartre's thought cuts deeper than the slogans about being true to yourself. He believed that refusing the script, whether it was written by God, by society, or by an academy in Stockholm, was not a one-time act, but a permanent practice. You cannot escape freedom, and you cannot complete the work of defining yourself. The moment you think you are finished is the moment you've given in to bad faith. This is also where Sartre's view stands apart from Marxist determinism. Marx saw history as driven by material forces, with individuals shaped by the conditions they inherit. Sartre did not deny those conditions, but he refused to let them absolve responsibility. Yes, you are born into a world not of your making, but you still choose how to respond. Your circumstances may limit your options, but they do not erase them. To say otherwise is to surrender the core of your humanity. Even liberal individualism, with its emphasis on personal choice, fell short in his eyes. It too easily reduced freedom to a marketplace of preferences, ignoring the moral weight of each decision. Sartre's freedom was heavier. It bound you to the idea that in choosing for yourself, you are choosing for everyone. You are in every act shaping the image of humanity you believe in. And so the demand stands unsoftened by time. There will be no final meaning, no ultimate arbiter, no safe absolution. You are condemned to be free. You will make yourself, and in doing so, you will help make the world. Whether you face that with honesty or hide in bad faith is, like everything else, up to you. When Sartre said we are condemned to be free, he wasn't offering a rallying cry. He was issuing a sentence. It sounds like a paradox. How can freedom be a condemnation? Isn't it what revolutions are fought for? What we believe gives life its dignity? But Sartre's freedom is not the kind sung about in anthems. It is not the lightness of doing whatever you want. It is the constant, inescapable weight of authorship over your own life, without instructions, without final authority, and without the possibility of giving it back. You didn't ask for it. You can't refuse it, even when you try to hand it away by obeying a leader, following a tradition, surrendering to a faith. You are still the one making that choice. That is why Sartre calls it a condemnation. You cannot escape responsibility for what you do, or for what you allow to be done in your name. This is what makes Sartre's moral philosophy so heavy. It isn't about following rules. It's about recognizing that every decision you make is not just a reflection of who you are. It is a declaration of what a human being should be. In Sartre's eyes, there are no trivial choices. To lie, to remain silent, to obey without thought, to betray. These are not private acts, they are public definitions, and you bear them whether you like it or not. And the work never ends. You cannot define yourself once and be done with it. You are redefined in each moment, in every act, in every refusal. You can live honestly today and fall into bad faith tomorrow. You can show courage in 1 hour and cowardice in the next. There is no permanent victory over the self, only the ongoing demand to choose again. This is where Sartre parts ways with those who came before him. Kierkegaard saw the dread of freedom as something to be overcome in a leap toward God. Nietzsche believed the answer to the void was the Übermensch, a figure strong enough to create values for a new age. Even Camus, with his bleak picture of the absurd, managed to frame existence as a rebellion worth embracing. Sartre denies all these escape hatches. There is no leap, no higher man, no heroic narrative that can take the weight off your shoulders. There is only you, facing the open field of possibility and the knowledge that every step leaves a mark you can never erase. And yet this is not despair. It is clarity. To see that there is no way out is to finally understand the stakes. Your circumstances may be crushing, your options narrow, but they are still yours. You can be born into injustice, into poverty, into a war you didn't start, and still, Sartre will say, you choose. Your freedom may not be the freedom you wanted, but it is the one you have, and it is yours alone to use or waste. This is the true condemnation. Not the absence of freedom, but its permanence. It is a prison with no bars, a sentence with no end. You can distract yourself with roles, surrender to the gaze of others, hide in bad faith, but the burden is still there, waiting. Sartre didn't write to make life easier. He wrote to strip it bare. To take away the stories we use as shields, the divine plans, the fixed natures, the comforting belief that we had no choice, and leave us standing alone with the truth. We are free, and that freedom is ours to bear, whether we like it or not. You can try to turn away. You can bury yourself in the gaze of others, let their definition of you become a mask you never remove. You can live in bad faith, repeating the same roles until you forget you chose them, but that won't change the fact that in every moment, you are deciding what kind of human you will be. And in Sartre's eyes, every decision is a statement about what humanity itself can be. That's the weight you carry. No rescuer, no escape, no final meaning to rest on. Only the knowledge that your life will be exactly what you make of it. and that even refusing to act is still a choice you will own until the end. So now the question turns to you. What will you choose, knowing there is no one else to choose for you? If you want to keep walking into these kinds of ideas, the ones that won't leave you comfortable but might leave you changed, stay here. Subscribe. Follow. Step into the next room with me. We've gone through Sartre, but there are other minds, other worlds waiting to be taken apart. And once you see them, you won't be able to unsee them.